Common constraints that you might face when handling, let's say the resources. It's including the limited availability, budget restrictions, and conflicting priorities. So um, you may, be running two or three projects at the same time, having, let's say, a limited resources. If you don't have, let's say, an ability to assess the priority to assign each of these resources based on priority, you might be, let's say, facing one of these resource constraints. Or also the early identification, how to solve such constraints, how to handle them in a more effective way. It's by the early identification um, of these constraints that will allow you to have a better mitigation strategies. Also, sometimes you may need, to escalate to the stakeholders for the critical issues which might impact your project constraints. And for example, here, let's say that there is a project may face an equipment shortage due the supply chain delays or budgetary limited restricted additional hires. So by conducting an early identification of such constraints, it allows the project managers to implement mitigation strategies such as resource reallocation or escalating issues to the stakeholder for a resolution. Now let's see the key tools and techniques is used when acquiring on resource allocation. Resource allocation tools and techniques such as the resource leveling, which help managing the over allocation by adjusting the task schedules. You also have the resource histogram, which provides a visual representation of resource usage, enabling managers to identify and address imbalances. Also, the collaboration platforms or tools like the Microsoft Teams or Slack uh, or Discord, which facilitate the real time updates, ensuring that all stakeholders are aware of resource availability. For example, let's say in an IT project, using resource histogram, it helps identifying when the developers are overbooked and it allows the task redistribution. So these are resource leveling is a very important concept that you might expect a question in the exam about not, let's say, overloading your resources with many tasks that it might impact the project quality. Now let's talk about overcoming the human resource constraints. So human resource constraints such as the skills shortages, it can be mitigated through strategies like cross-training team members to handle multiple roles in critical situation. Also external resources such as consultant or contractors. So you may, hire the consultant or a contractor to let's say to complete a certain part of the project if you don't have the enough experienced team members. Also, prioritizing tasks based on the available skill ensures that the critical activities proceed without any delays. For example, here, let's say in hospital expansion project, the cross-training nurses to handle multiple specialties ensures that the operation are continued despite of, let's say, staff shortages. So again, how to overcome the human resource constraints? We say that sure to have a cross training to enhance the workforce flexibility by conducting and enabling the team to have a training for certain areas that let's say it's related to their field, using the prioritization technique based on the resource availability, engaging the external resources if needed. If you don't have enough, let's say, internal resources, you may need to hire, let's say, a consultant or a contractor to complete the required work. When it comes to managing the material resources, so on the previous slide, we've discussed about the human resources. Now let's see managing the material resource constraints. Material resource constraints can disrupt the execution if not managed effectively. Maintaining a buffer stock or contingency, let's say reserve, for critical items can prevent the downtime. Also, a strong supplier relationship ensures the priority fulfillment of the urgent need. In some cases, reallocating materials from low priority tasks within the project can help maintaining the progress on critical activities. And let's have an example here. In an infrastructure project, diverting, let's say, superplus cement from a completed phase can keep another phase on schedule. So, to summarize our slide here, talking about how to manage the material resources, we said ensure to use a buffer stock for critical materials, develop a strong relationship with the suppliers to mitigate any supply chain risks, and reallocate the resources within the project if when necessary. How to monitor the resource utilization during the execution. So, monitoring resource utilization ensures that the project stays on track and within budget. Tools like dashboards and tracking softwares provide a real time insight into resource usage, helping managers to identify and address inefficiencies early and continuously. So, regularly also compare the actual usage against the plan, ensures the alignment with the project objectives. For example, in a software upgrade project, tracking developers' hours versus the planned effort highlights the areas that may need an adjustment or improvement. So again, to monitor the resources of your project during the execution, ensure to track the resources usage to identify inefficiencies, use the project management tools for real-time monitoring, and compare the actual resource usage against the plan. When it comes to communicating resource needs and adjustments, so effective communication of resource needs vital for for let's say ensuring the stakeholder support. And regular status reports can highlight the potential resource related risks, enabling timely intervention. A proactive communication ensures that the resource adjustment are approved and implemented without disrupting the project execution. So you need to regularly communicate with the stakeholders to ensure the alignment on the resources needed. Also utilize the status report by your team to highlight the resource related risks case if you might let's say face any resource limitation. So these status reports can tell you and help you to predict whether you are gonna, let's say, face any resource related risks, and then you can apply the mitigation plan to avoid impacting the project constraints. Ensure having an engagement and a proactive dialogue to secure the additional resources when needed. So these are the communicating when it comes to communicate the resources need an adjustment and the techniques that is used to ensure that you have, let's say, an efficient resource adjustment. And here are the key benefits for an effective resource management and execution. So, effective resource management during the execution ensures that the project remains on schedule and within budget by providing the team with the necessary resources and avoiding the overloading. Productivity and morale are maintained. Ultimately, this supports the successful achievement of the project objectives and deliverables. So, ensure to prevent delays and reduces the cost overruns, enhance the team productivity and morals, and support also the achievement of the project objectives by your team.